Good day. Welcome to the CORY MORGAN Show, getting into spring broadcasting from the permanently ceded territory on what under Treaty 7 says our Indigenous bands have no more claim to any longer. I just wanted to reiterate that today. At a fundraiser last week, I gave kind of my own version of a land acknowledgement, and it's something else. The fellow who videoed it took a little 30-second clip of it and threw it out on Facebook. The last I checked, over the last 10 hours, it's had nearly 400,000 views. I think people are getting tired of the old land acknowledgements. Maybe we should just start replacing them all with the real ones. I own my property. I don't care who was there 500 years ago. All right, I got an interesting show, though. Just going to talk about some historical things. I'm going to have author and journalist John Fraser on. He wrote a book about the governors general. I know I'm not much of a monarchist, but all the same, the history is fascinating and the role is important, and it's played a big part, and it's worth looking back on and remembering and talking about, even if I hope one day perhaps the parliamentary system's in the rearview mirror. It should be a really good discussion. Otherwise, lots of news and things to cover. Let's get on to what I'm going to rant about today. You guys have probably seen it. Hang on to your pocketbooks. This is the latest big liberal project. So while the Canadian economy is on the rocks, we got the ongoing tariff war racking the manufacturing sector, while Canada's soft embargo on expanding the ability to export oil and gas products prevents the energy sector from filling the economic void. We got subsidies for everything from battery plants to edible cricket farms, and they produce nothing more than a list of business failures, and our national debt's exploding. Yeah, nice picture. So to address all of this, the economic wizard of Prime Minister Mark Carney's decided what the nation must do is sink around $100 billion into a publicly owned high-speed rail project to service the Laurentian corridor in eastern Canada. The insanity of this notion beggars belief, yet the Liberal Party, along with its stalwart supporters and legacy media, have circled the wagons and are now in full campaign mode, pushing the alleged merits of a high-speed rail line. Proponents of the line can't pretend there isn't a model of a North American high-speed project to examine before diving into this one. California began its high-speed rail odyssey in 2008. It was supposed to run between Los Angeles and San Francisco and cost about $35 billion to build. They anticipated it to be operational by 2020, 6 years ago. And with over 20 million people along an 800-kilometer corridor, surely it could be a viable route for high-speed rail, right? Well, after 20 years and billions spent, not a single mile of track is operational on the California line. The budget's exploded over $126 billion for phase one, and they hope it might be operational by 2040. In short, it's been a catastrophe, and due to the government clinging to the sunk cost fallacy, we'll be able to watch this slow-motion train wreck for decades to come. The Canadian plan now is even more ambitious than the California one. They want to build 1,000 kilometers of high-speed rail through regions with far less population density than California. They're going to have to try and get it built in adverse Canadian weather, and they think it can be done for 23% lower than the current California line projections. And they think it's going to be finished by the 2040s as well. Now look at the relatively modest light rail transit expansion of the Ontario line. These are the same geniuses who are going to build this high-speed one, right? A mere 15.5 kilometers of line was supposed to be built with a projected cost of $10.9 billion in 2019. And it was going to be ready to go by 2027, next year. Well, the cost over 7 years is tripled, and the completion date's been pushed into the 2030s. Just think of what they're going to be able to do with a high-speed rail mega project. Proponents of high-speed rail like to point to European and Asian models as examples to follow, but it isn't an apples-to-apples comparison by any measure. First of all, the population densities aren't even comparable. I mean, Japan's in an area, smaller than Newfoundland, and it's got 120 million people. European and Asian cities are massive and close together, which creates a demand and feasibility. Even in the Laurentian corridor, the precious Laurentian corridor, Canada comes nowhere close to the densities of Europe and Asia. Then there's the vehicle culture. In Canada, over 80% of citizens have a private vehicle. In Europe, it's only 56%, and the number's even lower in most of Asia. People in Canada aren't going to give up their vehicles in the millions just because they have access to a high-speed rail option, whenever that might come. The ongoing subsidies, though, are going to be massive if this project even becomes complete. If the cost of the line and its maintenance are to be recovered, the tickets will have to cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars each. And it'll take over a century to pay it off if people are willing to pay that much. I mean, somebody calculated out you could pay for the airline flights between Montreal and Toronto for 180 years for the cost this line's going to be. The economic benefits of such a line are negligible. It won't be transporting freight. And with modern communication methods, people don't need to commute like they used to. The tourism demand between those city services is small, and the novelty of the line itself certainly isn't going to bring people out. The Liberal government likes spending announcements and likes mega projects, which are going to provide contracts and jobs for their friends for decades to come, whether the projects are ever completed or not. Perhaps Canada should just institute a direct fund with a budget of a few billion a year that Liberals can legally transfer to their cronies with. It'd be abhorrent, but it's still cheaper than going through the motions of building a high-speed rail line, and maybe more effective for economic stimulation. You don't need to be Nostradamus to foresee the disaster this high-speed rail line is going to become. It's just going to be a matter of how much is going to be blown on it and how long before fiscal reality forces the project to be formally ended. And one more word of warning. As much as I like her, our Premier Danielle Smith has got a fixation on trains and high-speed rail as well. We could see such a boondoggle out here if we aren't on guard. They sure love building those things. All right, let's see what else is going on in this big, wide world of brilliance with our news editor, Dave Naylor. Hey, Dave, as we can see, we can't afford razors.
So depressed.
Oh.
So depressed. Had a lovely long weekend in the lower mainland, and the trees were blooming, the cherry trees were blooming, and the grass was all green, and I was in shorts, and it was more than, I think it was 21, 22 Celsius. Get off the plane yesterday, and it's snowing.
Yeah. We still got at least 5 or 6 more snowfalls this winter.
Yeah. You're to blame. I keep saying you're to blame.
Hey, I've still got my winter tires on. I mean, that's the real asking for. It's when you take your winter tires off.
3 weeks ago, you said spring is sprung.
Well,
it hasn't.
I just, some false optimism to get people through the day. My apologies.
Hey, speaking of that high-speed train, our Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, his wife is a senior director of the train people.
Wow, what a coincidence, eh?
What a coincidence, eh? It's unbelievable. Yeah. Speaking of unbelievable stuff, out of Ottawa, we've got another floor crossing. Traitorous floor crossing. Marilyn Gladue from Sarnia. Her last comment before the House of Commons rose for their latest long break was a tirade against floor crossers and said there should be an automatic by-election for anybody who crosses the floor. Of course, when she was smiling with Carney this morning, there was no word of a by-election.
No, she sort of forgot that quickly. How many more we got, you think?
Somebody was saying last week that they were talking to 10 members of the Conservative Party. So that means 9 left, I guess. I mean, these people have the ethics. They're just, they have no ethics, right? It's just personal opportunity.
Weasels. And you know, the thing that drives me nuts the most about it is it sours everybody on the whole process. It causes more apathy, more indifference, which unfortunately just serves the weasels even more.
Yep.
It's a self-perpetuating.
I think Gladue was right. There should be by-elections if you want to cross the floor.
Yeah.
You were elected under a Tory banner. What gives you the right to decide you're going to become a Liberal?
Or at the very least, a realistic recall mechanism federally.
Yeah, exactly.
Give people a chance if they're in Sarnia saying, you know what, screw you, Ms. Gladue. We want to hold a by-election and take the choice out of her hands.
Yeah. She's a rather tall woman, and she looked like she was about a foot taller than Carney.
Yeah, I saw that picture. So it was kind of, I don't go on about their appearances that often, but I mean it was a striking picture. I guess.
How tall is Carney? He can't be any
very big man.
5'8", maybe
5'8", perhaps. Yeah, something.
High heels. Anyways, that's depressed everybody, and another depressing story today on the Alberta Human Rights Commission, your favorite body, has apparently going to hear the case of a Leduc woman who was in charge of a local newsletter in Leduc, and she made a comment that she didn't really care for drag shows, drag queen story hour, whatever they call it.
That monster.
Yeah, she said didn't like them, and somebody went apoplectic and reported her to the Human Rights Commission. So
yeah, there was something with that one too, though. I mean, at first the Human Rights Commission said no, it's too late, and we're not going to do anything. About it. Now it's been renewed.
They missed the filing deadline, and now they've said, okay, well, I know you've missed it, but we'll hear your case anyways. So she's being she's got your lawyers on the case, Corey, with the JCCF.
Yes.
So
it's the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, by the way, guys.
Exactly. We've got another latest from Joe Rogan, our friendly American podcaster. He's talking about the Liberal gun grab, and he's got a comedian on there to talk about it with him, so it's very entertaining. And job opening, Corey, you can apply for. The University of British Columbia is looking for a new forestry professor.
Forestry professor.
Yeah, like that.
I can almost pull that
trees
off, I
grow,
think,
they burn in forest fires. But
Oh,
in order to apply for the job, or in order to be considered for the job, you have to be an indigenous disabled woman,
oh,
preferably of color. Well, I guess if you're indigenous, you already are, right? Indigenous disabled.
well, geez. I mean, what if I cut off a finger, identify as indigenous, and count my tattoos as color?
The job is yours.
Well, it's got to pay a little better than I could afford razors.
There you go. Me too.
That's insane.
It's the last bastion of wokeism.
Well, they're
We're
getting really
making-
specific now, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, they got such a checklist they have to hit. Like, there must be somewhere they got a chart with a shortage. Lord, look at that. We're missing an indigenous disabled woman somewhere.
Exactly. Well, they've got to be out there.
Oh, yeah. Just go downtown.
Exactly. What they know about forestry, though, I'm not sure.
So we're going to be in front of the Human Rights Commission.
Yeah, we better move on. So that's it. That's all that's going on.
All right. I heard there's a little bit of stuff in Iran going on too, maybe.
Yes. Ceasefire. Israel is continuing to bomb the hell out of Lebanon. The Straits of Hormuz are closed by Iran, apparently. So yeah, it's a bit of a schmozzle.
Well,
but at least their civilization lives on after
yes.
Trump threatened to make the Iranians extinct. So yeah, it was
bizarre.
Bizarre is the word.
Yeah, we'll keep watching and reporting as we see it, I imagine.
We will.
All right. Well, thank you for the update. I'll let you go back to morosely looking out the window at the unblooming trees.
Snow's coming this afternoon.
Snow that's coming again. And
God, I hate you.
At least you've got the comfort of your memories, right? All right. Well, thanks for the update, Dave. I'll talk to you after the show.
Yeah, sure you will.
Yes, that little ray of sunshine is our news editor, Dave Naylor. And again, aside from being a little upset with the weather, he's really working on getting those news stories cranked out there in a timely manner and covering these things as they break. And they just keep breaking so fast. So it's where I like to remind everybody the reason we can do that, the reason Dave can do it, even without being able to buy razors, is subscribers. So guys, check it out. westernstandard.news/subscription, $10 a month, $100 for a year, full access. Get past that paywall and help support independent media so we can cover these things. Yeah, I don't know where to go with this, So Marilyn Gladu, I mean, she's not even, as Dave said, one of her last things was railing, the hypocrisy is just going. They don't even think twice about just completely flip-flopping on their own word. And she wasn't of the red Tory bunch. She wasn't somebody who was a little bit liberal and leaning that way, like Jen Aroo up in Edmonton really was just more of an opportunistic liberal in the first place rather than a conservative. No, Gladu was ripping into the liberal government for years, very conservative and reelected as a conservative. And she was on about the gun grab, which I guess she's okay about that now. She has been very critical about the liberal censorship on bills and things like that. I guess she's okay with the liberal censorship now. Like, it's just sickening. And that's why people don't bother going out to vote anymore. It really is. The turnouts go down. And as I said to Dave, then the weasels just really entrench themselves because nobody's holding them accountable anymore. And we all lose. We all lose. I've got no shortage of cynicism within me. I always have had a degree of that. But I always like to feel, though, that at least if we got up, we engaged, we participated in the electoral process, our representatives will, to some degree, fill that role with some principles and stay within there. But as we see, there's been differences with those floor crossings, some who are perhaps a little close in ideology to the federal government than others. But Gladu, come on, guys. I mean, I got to wonder how some of the Liberal members feel suddenly embracing this new member of their caucus who so recently was ripping them on pretty much every principle she could. All right, but let's get on to the unelected aspect of our government. And it's fascinating. And as a myself, I'm not much the monarchist type, but I still am. I love our history and it's something that I love reading about and going into. And even if I want to see it change. So John Fraser, who's a journalist and author who's been around a long time, wrote The Governors General. And it's a lot of short stories covering them from the 60s all the way up into the current. It's a little more than just your typical history book or something like that. A lot of personal information from whether well, he managed to use praying to get out of getting the cane for smoking, or offering the latest Governor General's husband just some advice on how to be the second person in office there. It was a really good read, and I've been looking forward to talking to him. So let's bring in Mr. Fraser and discuss that book. Hello, sir. Thank you very much for joining us today.
I'm thrilled. I was enjoying listening to talk about the very transportable members of parliament that we have these days.
Yeah, well, and I guess, I mean, it's an elected role. People will come and go. People come and go in the role of Governor General as well. But I guess with our vice regals, I could see in some sense there's a little more of an honesty to it. You know that it's a role that's an appointed one, and often for optics or political reasons rather than functionality. But it's maybe I could have faith in feeling a little better about some of the people there rather than our elected officials right now.
Well, it's sorry, you see, your elected officials that more or less decide who's going to be your governor general. I think it's something most Canadians don't quite factor in, because we're not that good on civics in this country, or civic education. But at the moment, Canadians don't want to have a British monarch as their head of state, or don't want governors general. All they have to do is get 10 legislatures to agree. Well, 12 legislatures, actually, with some territorial. And that's the end of it. But you and I both know there's not a hope in heaven of that ever happening. And my view on one level is practical. If this is what we've got, let's make the best of it, because there's many good things that system that we have evolved over the years does well. And one of them is that it is not a huge issue, our head of state, in terms of screwing up our minds when things go badly. And the American system, which is a really interesting Republican system, which there's lots to admire, produced Lincoln and Roosevelt and so on, but it is basically a 18th century system of government. My theory is they keep reelecting George III every 4 years down there, because they concocted a head of state that's modeled on a Hanoverian monarch, George III. So, and it's very hard to change that constitution.
Oh yeah, well, neither constitution is as easy to change at this point, and for the most part, our governors general, I mean, are harmless. They've got a large amount of theoretical power, but it's very rarely exercised.
They
But
don't.
they have influence, and you do cover that in your book. I mean, they are an important part of the culture.
It's true. But their job is ceremonial, and it is to do the dignified end of our Constitution, and it's evolved. There's a grand old dame at the college I used to administer in Toronto named Ursula Franklin. She's a Holocaust survivor and physicist, and she said she liked the crown because she liked the whole spectacle of absolute power completely defanged, which is an interesting way of looking at this.
That is absolutely. I've only had one experience with a vice regal, and that was at the Alberta Lieutenant Governor. It was Lewis Mitchell, actually. We'd had a time capsule opening in the small town that I'm in, and my wife was on the committee, and they said, well, let's reach out and see if she would come out. And she did. And what astounded me, though, was actually the amount of rules and advance work and everything we were told about all that pomp. And
That's just a mini head of state. But, it's Alberta we have to thank for producing the first Indigenous person to be a vice regal, and that goes back a bit. The provincial vice regals have often been the pace setters for innovation in this position. The first woman, the first Indigenous person, the first Black person, first Chinese person. That's all come not from Ottawa, but from the provinces. And it's a way. If you want to look for positive things about our system, it's a way of signaling the changes in our society without having to go through subject some poor people to some of the horrible things that happen in elections.
Yeah, well, and it made the event that we had actually more special rather than if there was just an elected official. As much as at first I was like, well, look at all these old trappings of an old system that I find insulting almost as a non-monarchist. But then when you take part in it, well, you realize, well, this made this event something much more and something more special because this was a person of a different sort of stature. And it made it, people remembered that. So it showed a different service they're providing that people don't think of necessarily.
Yeah, and also not wanting the monarchy is a perfectly legitimate stance. I mean, Canadians should be examining their system of government. That's a proper thing a good citizen does. One thing most Canadians don't realize, but is actually caught up in our system and has to do with this whole business of reconciliation that we've all been gasping our way through one way or another, is that the Crown has its own unique history with the Indigenous nations of this country. And it's all based on treaties, on legal relations. And it's sometimes a shock for non-Indigenous Canadians to realize that for many Indigenous people, particularly older ones, the reverence for the Crown seems almost inexplicable, except that it is rooted in what they consider to have been a fair relationship before Confederation. It goes right back to the original treaty relationships between the Crown, the British Crown, and the Canadian Indigenous communities. And that's something that has resurfaced in the wake of all the turmoil we've been putting ourselves through in reconciliation. And it has the opportunity of being the Crown being a bridge community. It's really interesting, Corey, if you look at some of the history, whenever Queen Elizabeth ever came over here, there was always a meeting with Indigenous leaders. And it was almost as if the two sides, the Crown and the Indigenous leaders, both knew that they were somewhat disdained by the broader Canadian masses, but that they had each other and they could support each other. That was an insight I took from all those meetings.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. And I really enjoyed reading your book and how you presented it, because it wasn't a dry old history book on this. It was just giving some good accounts and personal things. And what I liked is you brought up actually some of the other people, including the spouses of the governors general, because people forget them and they're important. But also this gentleman Esmond Butler came up a number of times. It seems almost like a whole book could be done on this man. Speaking of the power behind the throne, he seemed quite fascinating.
It's being done. There's a guy down in Nova Scotia that's doing a piece on. He was a really interesting guy. One of the problems some of the successors of the early sort of more imperial governor generals had was they didn't have a solid bureaucrat there helping to guide them. Every cabinet minister has a senior unelected advisor in the deputy minister, and governor generals are no different. They come and they go, but they need someone that actually knows how things are done. In the palace in London, they're known as the Grey people. There's Prince Harry's book. He talked about the horrible Grey people. Well, they're the people that actually make a system work. They're the people like we're looking out from a camera, but you know how many people need to make you look good on that camera and all that sort of thing. So those people are important, and Esmond Butler was important, and he lived through about 3, 4, or 5 vice-regal appointments. And then governor generals started to want to have their own person to be their deputy minister. And I think they lost some of the sense of continuity, but they didn't ask my advice, although they're getting it.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you did note, you were critical when need be. One of the issues with governors general, particularly when you're going to be in such a spot with such prestige, is the vanity can really come forth. It seems to be their own biggest enemy for the most part. For the ones, if they manage to get into trouble, they've sort of forgotten about how some of their actions might be perceived by the public.
I think what happens in the cases that don't work is they've forgotten that they're not there because of them. They may think that it's because of them, and that may be what propelled them to the attention of the prime minister. But in the end, the job is not about them; it's about the country. And my advice to anybody who's considering that they think they would be a good governor general is take a look at the country that you love and has propelled you in this position, and what do they need? What does it need at the moment? What are people out west thinking? What do they want? Why is Quebec so alienated? All sorts of things. And then how do you then do things that don't conflict with elected officials but can somehow make people feel good. And I did try and give an example, a practical example, when Adrian Clarkson brought the unknown warrior back to Soldier, and I did her whole speech because I thought there was someone struggling to try and pull people together through the symbolism of this sacrifice. And to me, that's what a governor general should be doing.
Yeah, and that speech was excellent. I mean, from the point of just reminding people somebody might have gotten a telegram about their loved one, and that's all you knew, and you never heard of such, and we shouldn't forget that sort of thing. But I'm wondering then, she uh, presented the speech fantastically, and she's a very skilled media person, still is.
Yeah.
But was that written by her or for her in that case?
Oh no, believe me, it was written by her. She's
Mhm.
don't even suggest anything
Well,
else.
she's quite capable. That's why I'm asking. I mean,
Well, she
had it
wrote-
been
she
Payette, I'd
wrote-
know it was written by somebody else.
Any importance, she has speechwriters. She had speechwriters. All governor generals do, all premiers do. But she knows, she had, the reason she was a good governor general, and you know, she has a prickly personality too, which is known for. This comedy routine that used to say, "Oh, I'm Adrian Clarkson, you're not," was meant to sort of symbolize that she was perhaps a bit of a snob or whatever. But she was a great governor general because she had a sense of the country, and that speech was example. But she also, whenever there was something, a big deal, she would write her own speeches, no question. And to me, that was one of her assets, was that she was a good communicator. She knew how to present herself, and she understood, perhaps because she was slightly at a remove from a traditional governor general, in because of her race and her gender.
Yeah, well, and then she wasn't lacking for resources in the household. I mean, her husband, John Ralston Saul, is a persona in his own right, of course,
Absolutely.
and
And he yep.
he seemed as I guess being in that role, it comfortably embraced being kind of the second person for a little while. I guess confident enough in his own place that it worked out very well, actually.
That's it. That's exactly it. In his case, in under the new sort of governor general, and under the old system, the more traditional governor generals, the one that was really happy was Madame Vanier, because she was used to that position. But you know, I put in the book a story that I once had an interview with Prime Minister Harper, and he said the single biggest headache he had with most of his vice-regal appointments was spousal alienation, the Prince Philip job, walking 3 steps behind, and just not defined. And the only thing I've suggested that I thought any new prime minister or appointment to this office should consider is to make an understanding that the spouse, whether it's male or female, has a more elevated role in this and could do things. And to me, there was a great example by accident when Governor General Leger, who had a stroke in office, and his wife basically had to become the Governor General. She read the speeches from the throne and did a terrific job. And most of our relationships, our marriages, if they're working, is marriage of equals, and I think that office should be a reflection of what is everyday reality in our lives.
Yeah, well, and just to kind of cap it off, it went quickly, but I mean, I would suggest people read the whole book so they could get it all. And towards the end, you shared what you'd offered as advice for Mary Simon's husband, in a sense, I guess, just to help with that role and things like that. Is perhaps it important, I guess, for these people getting into these roles, but they don't necessarily know what they're getting into, or their spouses might like.
Haven't a clue. I don't think anyone has a clue when they go into it. I'm hoping my book scares off the right people and encourages the right ones.
Well, that's it. It sounds like a lot of it's the right place and the right time. As you mentioned, you might have been in consideration at one point, but they felt we've had enough journalists for now. And
That's true. But there was the other issue I had, which was my wife, when she heard there was sniffing around me, she said, if you want to play queen, you can do it on your own. And we've been married 50 years, and I know who the boss is. And I also owe her so much, because I was 20 years in a kind of similar position at Massey College as the master of the college, and she gave up her career in CBC and lots of things so that we could do it together, and she was great at that. So she'd earned the right to say, okay, enough.
Well, that's good. And you'd written on the importance on how it is a partnership for the governors general and their spouses going in. So you knew as well in such a role, if you don't have the other half on board,
Misery,
you're just it's a
misery,
recipe for disaster.
misery.
All right. Well, thank you very much for writing that and for taking the time with us. Before I let you go, how can people find a copy of this book?
Should be in leading bookstores everywhere. Are there any bookstores left out in the West? Come on.
There's a few here and there. They're not like they used to be, that's for sure.
Well,
I got to admit, I get most of mine online now.
you want to hear something shocking? They told me yesterday, I think because it got launched officially and there was a launch, but they told me it was this is a book on governors general, and you know what I'm talking about. It was #1 of the day nonfiction on Amazon. And it's the timing. I do think we thank President Trump for making us take a look at our own system of government. That's one of the pluses of that presidency. And also, I think also the transition is coming. There's going to be a new one appointed almost any day or announced. So
Yeah, no,
it's
we've
lucky
seen that
timing
announced.
for me.
Yeah, it's on the way, and we certainly to see a parallel of our system with the crazy orange man down south helps us maybe examine that as imperfect as ours might be, there's also some issues to be dealt with on the other end of the spectrum.
There are.
All right.
And
Well, thank
very
you.
much for talking about this subject, which is very dear to my heart and important.
Oh, I could tell in reading the writing of it, and I look forward to being able to speak with you about it. So I thank you again, and look forward to perhaps seeing more of your work out there.
Thanks, Corey. Take
All right,
care.
thank
Good
you.
luck.
So, yeah, guys, one more time that it was John Fraser, and if you look it up, yes, on Amazon or in your local bookstores, then the Governor's General, and it's a good read, and it's just the ones from the '60s, getting up into contemporary, and as I said, I mean, yeah, there's guys like me. I like reading some nice thick history tomes and so on, but this is broken more into bite-sized pieces, Governor General by Governor General, and it's not going into the real nuts and bolts, but just more of the personalities and characters of them, and they have been. From ones, I guess, and he was, critical and flattering on each of them in different aspects. Ed Schreier, sort of one who was just sort of adequate. He was there. He did okay. Didn't do bad. Didn't stand out, and filled the role. And you get farther, as I mentioned, Julie Payette, who really, I think most people would agree, just was a terrible, terrible selection for the job. Just was not the person who should have been there. And it's not that she was a foolish person, that she was very accomplished. I mean, this is an astronaut, literally. This is a strong force, a determined person, but just did absolutely horrifically in that role. And some of that, I guess, is you got to point to the person who selected her for that. And that is Justin Trudeau, whose vision for the consequences of his actions was never really one of his stronger points, to say the least. I've been, you know how I feel about former Prime Minister Trudeau. Either way, yes, I suggest you guys get out, grab that book if you like history, if you and contemporary history and the realities of some of the things with the system right now. I mean, I'm as critical of the system as it gets. I feel that we should work towards something of a more Republican system, or of course, outright independence. I mean, and if we look at Michelle Jean, she was independence leading from the Quebec side of things and still managed to sit as a governor general. Again, an interesting cast of characters. I don't think I'll ever be sitting in that role, but we've got to learn from what's gone on before us and what's happened in there and realize that these people do hold important roles, even if at times it feels they aren't necessarily doing a good job at it. All right. I'm just trying to keep up with the news with things. I was, speaking of polarity in politics, I mean, I'm pretty conservative, but yeah, Trump, boy, when I saw that statement, when he was talking about annihilating a civilization, and then people, look, the word genocide has been abused. It's been misused. It's been applied to everything from Kentucky Fried Chicken outlets to, to what's happening or happened in Gaza, to all over the place. And it is questionable. But when you actually will stand up and say that you're going to eliminate an entire civilization, and he didn't, and he probably never was planning to, but that is what genocide is, guys. It is. And I'm sorry, but that is grossly irresponsible. I'm tired of the apologists for Trump and the mess he's making on some of this, guys. And I know, and they get all upset with me. You know, when I put a tweet out just saying, look, no president should speak that way ever. You just don't. You just don't. I don't care about your art of the deal crap. I don't care from some people trying to say, well, he didn't really mean it. He's just a BSer, and that's the way he negotiates. You don't negotiate by threatening to annihilate an entire civilization. People say, oh, he only just meant actually the Iranian government or the IRGC. No, he didn't. He said his whole civilization. You don't take him literally. I have to take him literally because he literally is the man with the access to the nuclear codes. So when he says stuff like that, even though you know, and I knew when I saw it that, yeah, he's probably just being full of crap again. But this is serious, serious business. This is a war. This is missiles flying, people dying, buildings being leveled. And when a man as unserious as that is propagating this, and then people saying, look, he got the ceasefire today. I didn't. That lasted only about 20 minutes. It sounds like the latest reports now that Iran has closed the strait again, and they've launched missiles into Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, and at Israel. So I don't know. The hornet's nest has been poked over there. The goal should be to find a ceasefire and some resolution. But some people are, you know, some of the stuff they were saying to me, oh, Corey, put the tampon back in your butt and stuff like that, because I was critical of Trump. Guys, if your leader can't be criticized, you're in a cult. Okay? I'm not saying Trump hasn't done a single thing that's been good. No, he's done some good things. But seriously, he's doing some really unhinged things lately. I mean, I am not a supporter of Iran. I've always been a strong supporter of Israel. I still am supportive of the efforts in southern Lebanon because you got Hezbollah. It's been launching missiles from there into Israel for years and years and years. And how long are you going to put up with that? The analogy I use is if you were near Buffalo, New York, and then on the Canadian side for years, they were just launching missiles into Buffalo all the time. How long do you think it'd be before there's going to be retaliation? I see a commenter, Cyril Arnold, said Israel broke the ceasefire by attacking Lebanon, and Iran retaliated. Well, you see, the ceasefire didn't involve Lebanon. It was about Iran. So we got to understand the complexities of this deal. And that was already put up by the White House. Their peace deal had nothing to do with Israel dealing with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. That wasn't part of the deal. That's the excuse that Iran's using now to start shooting again. Though, again, I'm not saying Israel doesn't do anything wrong either. No, they do. But how long are you going to put up with it? The Middle East has been an issue since, God, since the Messiah was walking around, if he did. And it will continue to be. And, how do you resolve it? I don't know. But you need somebody more nuanced than Trump to deal with it. That's one thing I'll definitely say. And we can't sit and claim he's doing a good job when he pulls off things like that. And even if the ceasefire had held, and maybe it'll come back in, look at the terms of it. He's calling it a victory, but that's Trump. I mean, Trump would crap himself and claim it was a victory because he saved a bathroom somewhere. I mean, they were talking about this ceasefire deal, meaning that Iran gets to charge a toll for every ship going by there, and that they still get to maintain their weapons development programs, and basically saying we're turning back the clock, and maybe we'll actually help you rebuild some of that. What on earth did you just accomplish? I don't know. But there's stuff I literally don't know. There's stuff I don't know what happened with this behind closed doors or whatever else, fine. But that response from some of the people, and I know social media is not exactly where I'm going to get good, nuanced responses to thoughts and questions. But when some of them climb all over me because I criticize the Orange Man, guys, again, think a little harder. No leader is above critique, particularly Trump. And I'd say he's getting worse. He's getting more unstable. And he's in a very strong position of power. And I can't say that his moves have been rational when they haven't been. Either way, let's see what else we got going on in our mess. Speaking of identity and history and things like that, Nigel Hannaford, writes fantastic opinion stuff in here as always. Talking about Canada's Ministry of Propaganda rewriting the Citizen's Guide into Woke Utopia. Give that one a read. It's good. This is where we're going. This is the citizenship guide. This is the new Canadians that were supposed to be coming here, and this guide towards citizenship, because they put in a whole bunch of revisionist woke crap into it. And that's what they're getting taught when they come here. And we wonder why we have problems with assimilation, integration, communities getting along over here. This is more of that undercutting of Canada's identity. This is more of that post-national state that Trudeau talked about that actually has led to the unity crisis we're having today. And it's, things are falling apart. Speaking on the unity front. So we've had the court hearings going on with the, just for people not familiar with Alberta, the Sturgeon Lake Band feels that it should not be allowed for Albertans to have a referendum without their permission. That's the bottom line. They feel that people who represent less than 5% of Canada's Alberta's population should be able to tell the whole 100% what we're allowed to or not allowed to have a vote on. It's before a judge. And it sounds like that it's a gong show. Their legal team, they picked them from Timu or something. They're just bizarre. But it's funny, on social media, I was getting these tweets from people who were saying, yeah, Corey, you came up in the courtroom yesterday. What? Yeah, I guess because I shot that video on the Siksika Reserve. That's the reserve that got over $1 billion from Trudeau. And yet the people, it looks like backwater Mexico, because the chiefs and council did something with $1.2 billion. Who knows? But it certainly didn't build houses. And I shot video of it and got them very upset. And they charged me with trespassing. That's going to go to my own trial, which would make sense that my name's going to come up in later in June. But I guess they were claiming that the whole independence movement's full of racists because of that. They called me racist in the courtroom. As I said, I don't quote Trudeau's often, but Pierre Trudeau said it best at one time, saying, I've been called worse by better. I really don't care if a bunch of entitled losers like the Sturgeon Lake Band and their half-rate lawyers, were these DEI hires or something? The judge, I guess, has mostly been dismissing all of their stuff. They were talking about foreign interference and the Russians are behind the independence, but all this crazy stuff in front of the judge. And the judge is like, geez, what's going on? Either way, I just like to bring attention to things. So if you want, check out my YouTube channel, look up Cory Morgan, and you can see for yourself some of the reserves I shot video on. Let's keep using that Streisand effect. If you guys want to keep coming back at me on this, that's fine. I'll keep exposing what you're doing over there, and it's not good, guys. I can't believe somebody who's managing their own people's lives so horribly and corruptedly, is corruptedly a word? I don't know. As the Chiefs, though, have the nerve to tell anybody else that they can or can't have a referendum on something. I just got to hit a commenter again. Cyril Arnold saying Lebanon did not attack Israel. Bull. Spare me. Come on. Hezbollah has been camped, and I was just there last fall, southern Lebanon, and using it as a launch pad to attack Israel for years. They're entrenched in there. Why are houses getting hit? Because they put the rocket launchers in people's houses. And the government of Lebanon has had a long time to clean that up. And like I said, the other analogy talking about somebody launching stuff into Buffalo, it'd be like the Canadian government saying, oh, well, we're not doing it, but it's those guys down in Niagara Falls doing it. It's not our fault. You think the states would say, oh, okay, well, we'll just let them keep launching rockets at us then? No. Lebanon did attack Israel. At least Hezbollah did attack Israel from southern Lebanon. And Lebanon keeps housing Hezbollah. So yeah, this is going to happen. You know what? Something I mentioned a little while ago. Look on a map. Jordan. It's kind of got the biggest border with Israel of them all. Look at that. Jordan, full of Palestinians, Muslims, Islamic people. And guess what? Israel has never done a thing to them lately. Why? Because Jordan hasn't been attacking them. Look at that. You don't launch rockets into Israel. You don't send terrorists into Israel. You don't rape Israelis and slaughter people at music festivals. And holy crap, they leave you alone. What a formula. Astounding how that works, isn't it? It's a mess over there, but I'm not going to make excuses for Lebanon's government. They've been housing that crap. All right, back to the other thing. Just one other thing. Land acknowledgements and fun stuff. Freedom Calendar put that up. It was about 500,000 views. I spoke at a fundraiser last week, and I did my own version of a land acknowledgement, like I said, and it's just gone crazy with that. People are sick of those things, and they're sharing that like heck, so they want to hear something else. Maybe it's time we all, at every possible opportunity, give a realistic land acknowledgement. Let's push back. Stop that indoctrination and crap from being fed in our schools, our sporting events, our radio stations, you name it. I'll be doing other things. I'll be at Peace River Friday night, speaking with Chris Scott and some others on Independence this week, driving up north. I'll be at Lacrete Saturday night, way up there. Come on out if you get the chance, though. It'll be a good chat, talking some Independence. We're spreading that stuff all over the place. I'm putting a lot of miles on the car these days. We'll see how the court actions go. Tomorrow, I believe Jeff Rath and Eva Chipiuk are going to be speaking on the pro-referendum side. It's sad that we have to fight for the right of democracy like that, but we do. And that's the way it goes. Be sure to tune in to The Pipeline tonight. We'll break down some more issues and things going on, and subscribe to all those Western Standard channels and things and everything else. And thank you guys for the comments, even the ones disagreeing with me. That's part of it. I do support free speech, even if I'm going to call you weenies for disagreeing with me at times. So thank you for tuning in today, guys. We will see you again next week at this time.